Hey guys, what's going on? It's Dan Gheesling. Welcome to episode 3 of the podcast. We're going to jump right into it today. I want to thank everyone for dialing in, whether you're watching in the early morning, listening in the early morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you get around to it. I appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to listen to this and put me in your earbuds. I truly do, and I don't take that responsibility lightly. But anyways, I want to jump right into this week. Really an update of what's been going on, things that have gone well, some slight stories and things of that nature. But the big thing this week, that a game came out called Scum. And for those of you that are not familiar with the game, it essentially is a more polished version of DayZ, although it's in early access. So a few weeks ago, I knew this was going to come out. I've been watching it from afar. I played it at a PAX West. I don't know, a while back, at least a year ago. So I knew I was going to want to cover this at least in it and give it a shot on the channel, whether it was Twitch or YouTube. So anyway, so I reached out to Scum, the developers. It was published by, or it's being published by Devolver. So I reached out to them and said, hey, I'd love to cover this on the channel. What do I need to do to request a copy or to request a code? And this was an email. It took some legwork. You have to find the community manager, et cetera, et cetera. So I did that. They responded and said, yeah, hey, add us on Discord or add the community manager, and Discord will send you a code. So it was a day or two before the release, and I didn't get a code. So I reached back out to them in Discord. They said, oh, we sent you one. And I'm like, hey, I just double checked. I don't have one. Would you mind sending me one? No problem. They fired one out. Easy peasy, right? So it worked out. And the reason why I was glad I did it, because they did something really unique. And as someone who creates videos and live streams, I liked how they did it, because they released it to people that created YouTube videos and were on Twitch. So when you signed into the game, there was only other people that you definitely would have heard of, but other people in the same space. So when I played the game, I ran into some friends inadvertently. Right, so I played the game twice on Twitch, and both times I ran into people that I had known in real life, whether met in person at PAX or had done videos with, just ironically. So that was a really cool experience, the way that they did it. But I really want to talk a bit more about requesting codes, because at the sake of non-self-aggrandizing, of coming off as cocky, in the early days of YouTube, when I first started, I thought I should just get these codes, right? Like, people should be sending me these codes because, I thought I was some hotshot coming off a reality TV show. After you get a little humble pie, it's really been the journey, right? So I've been doing this for 5+ years, and really after a few months of doing, I'm like, hey, look, no one really cares about anything. The only thing that publishers and gaming companies care about are two things. One, that you're actually going to enjoy playing the game, or it fits in your wheelhouse. And two, that you have some sort of audience where they can justify, or a channel that they can justify sending you a free code. And I say that not because I'm not trying to cover anything up, but I really was cocky coming out when I started the channel, and it didn't take very long for me to get whapped in the face and say, hey, look, this is going to be some work. It's continuing work, especially for a growing channel like mine. I got a long way to go. But one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up is because through Twitter, I saw some people passively aggressive tweeting the company, saying like, oh, gee, thanks Devolver for my code, or hey, looks like they left me off the list. And I look at that, and it's kind of like how I look at anything else. It's like, well, what did you do to request it? For me, it took a little work. It's not like I was moving mountains or, laying a brick foundation. But a couple weeks prior to the game being released on early access, I'm like, hey, look, I got to get on the ball. I want to do this. So let me go out and reach out. And I think maybe in the early days, I might have been, one, I didn't think I fully understand it, and two, like I said, there was some cockiness there where it's like, hey, well, I should just get these codes. And I think there are people, 100% I know there are people that have huge channels that game companies just inundate them with game keys. And I'm definitely not to that size, but on a daily basis, I'll get a lot of codes sent to me with the caveat that they're not games like Scum. Sometimes they're meme games, sometimes they're games that I have absolutely no interest in. Sometimes there's Steam keys sent to me like with a form letter. It's like, hello, a parentheses content creator, we love your channel. And I'm like, really? Dude, so much so that you left the parentheses in there? And so when I get those, I don't immediately dismiss them. I go through an internal filter really quick. Like, how is the subject line? Is there any screenshots or a quick YouTube gameplay trailer attached to it? And does the game even sound like something I'd want to play? So depending on, after a while, your email gets out there and people send you codes. And once in a while, one will slip through. I don't want to say slip through. One will catch my attention and I'll play it on the channel because it sounds like something I'd like to do. But the majority of them go right into the fire bin and trash them. But the whole point of telling the story is that, there's some work involved with getting the key. And like I said, it's not a big deal, but you got to put yourself out there, and it's a part of the content creating where if you do little things like that, at least for me that I've noticed, it took some foresight, but I was so glad that I had done it. And it wasn't a difficult thing to do, but it's just one of those things where it's like, hey, look, you got to continue to put yourself out there. You got to continue to reach out. And there's been plenty of times when I've reached out to companies and I'll either get a no or just straight crickets. And that's going to happen. But for every time that happens, there's been an experience like with Scum where it worked out perfectly and just in a really fun capacity. So I wanted to talk about that just because when I see tweets like that, I just think to myself, that probably sounded like me in the early days, but I would have never tweeted about it. And number two, that's not how I would recommend approaching anything. I'm just not a woe is me kind of person. Like if I didn't get the Scum key, I would have waited a couple days and played it. I probably wouldn't have played it as much or, just because I don't know. I would have given it a shot, but it's almost like a two-way street. If a developer or a company feels like, hey, this would be a good fit, then you're a little bit more apt to try it out. And I don't want to say that as in a non-objective way, but in that case where it's like, hey, look, I knew the Scum key was like they weren't exactly growing on trees. So the fact they sent one, I'm like, all right, cool. Well, I'm going to give it a fair shot. I never allow myself like getting a key for that to affect my opinion of the game, if that makes sense. I like to remain objective, but at the same time, it feels good to be like, all right, hey, look, they sent me one and I appreciate it. Anyways, another thing that happened this week, I talked about, I think on episode 1, is I knew NBA 2K19 was coming around the corner, which in my current YouTube mold / Twitch, it doesn't fit, right? But I love playing the game. So I tried to think, okay, how can I creatively get 2K19 onto the Twitch show and onto my YouTube channel without it derailing my normal workflow and or alienating or making people have it feel weird. For example, if you tune into the live stream Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, there's a certain thing you expect. You expect roughly one part of the show to be Tarkov and one part of the show to be another game, more often than not Dark Souls or Dark Souls 2. So what I decided to do, because I had a little extra time on Friday, I did a live pre-show prior to the show. And this is just something I shot off the top of the dome. But as opposed to taking away from the Dan Gheesling show, which is from 1 to 4, I started the live stream at 12 and did a live pre-show. I didn't have what I typically wear for the show. I didn't have a red shirt on. And I was trying to be clear that, hey, the show hasn't started yet. So I played it. The reception was pretty good. And it gave me a VOD to edit down so that I could edit down an hour of the NBA 2K19 VOD, which is time I would have spent playing the game. And I went back and forth because I said to myself, do I want to burn an hour or two recording this on YouTube or recording it off camera or off stream for YouTube, or do I want to do it on the Twitch stream and just it's kind of like a 2-for-1 situation. One, you can see if people are going to like it, if they're going to enjoy it, and you're essentially creating the same content. So that's kind of been the internal debate in my head, is that the creation of original YouTube content, it's a tough sell. It is. And to me, I know it has to be done, but it has to be done in an efficient way. And you're seeing at least some of my friends are moving to less and less original YouTube content. And I don't think I'll ever abandon original YouTube content, meaning not just Twitch VODs on the channel, just because it's important. I don't think I ever want to put all my eggs in one basket. And that kind of leads me to another discussion in terms about, is Twitch going to be around in 10 years? And, is this, you just don't know. You never know what's going to happen. So you want to keep spreading things out. And I think that's why for me, I will never just make YouTube Twitch only VODs. I'll always have a series going. Ideally, I'd like to have two. But anyways, 2K19, it was a good experience. I think people enjoyed it. I don't think I'm going to be able to find a way to work it into the current live show, but maybe I'll tack it on to a Tuesday night stream or things of that nature. But for me, it was as another experiment to try out. How did the pre-show go? Good. Did people enjoy it? Yeah. Did people understand what to expect at 1 o'clock? So I started the stream at 12 and then 1 p.m. started. Yeah. So I think I did it in a way that worked out, and I was happy with it. In particular, the response and also getting the content done. Outside of that, during the live show on Friday, I went a little bit deep into the rant that I put up on the podcast feed. So if you missed it between episodes 2 and 3, I essentially took the VOD or my thoughts that I recorded about the Logan Paul KSI fight and put it into the audio feed for you guys to listen to. So if you missed that, and throughout the show, so I have a weekly show come out every Monday, which is the podcast. And in between there, my goal is to have at least one other piece of content hit the feed, whether it's a rant, a quick game review, or something. But in this case, it was the Logan Paul KSI thing. And I went in depth into that. I'd say I probably went to a 5 to 10 minute in-depth talk. And it was a little bit different because we had a live Twitch audience talking about it. And I don't regret it, but at the same time, I realized very quickly that wasn't the forum to do that, right? The forum to do that is the podcast, because I was talking about something controversial, vaguely controversial, but more so something where if you talk about Logan Paul or KSI, more Logan Paul, people on the internet have a very strong opinion about that. So as I was going deeper and deeper into it, I internally pumped the brakes. And if you were part of that show when it aired live, you probably saw on my face, 99% of the time of the show, I'm smiling, I'm laughing, having a good time. But I went down this rant. I'm like, you got to pump the brakes. This is not the forum for it, because really the environment of the show is very positive, very uplifting, joking around. And this is kind of a serious topic because people got fired up when you talk about Logan Paul. But it was another one of those things that I did where it's like, hey, it kind of happened. And then you take a step back after the show and analyze, do I want to do this again? And very quickly I learned, nah, you don't want to do that again. But at the same time, there's going to be moments, and I've talked about this more so in the rant that was posted on the feed if you didn't hear it. But I'm more at a point now where I'm more comfortable sharing my honest opinion and not self-censoring about things like that, just because it's, you can only play the middle for so long. And if you're going to take the time out to listen to podcasts or feeds, I want to give you guys something a little different than you wouldn't necessarily get on the live Twitch show or on YouTube. And I think this is the forum for that, because I can really go in depth without essentially, and I don't mind the live feedback, but it just wasn't the right forum for that. So that's something else I learned during the live show this past week. Another thing that popped up, something small, but something I thought was kind of cool, is in our community Discord at dangheesling.tv/Discord. So if you don't know what Discord is, essentially it is a program you download. It can be on your phone and or your desktop, but essentially it mobilizes your Twitch community. So people that have Discord, there is a channel for my Twitch channel where people hang out. So regulars that are part of the community, if they wanted to hang out or play games together or talk outside of the show, it's the perfect program for that. So over time, things have been really growing there, but it's really been the first time there's been a movement. Some people wanted to create a server for Minecraft for people to play together. And I'm all for that. And I thought it was kind of cool that there's some people taking charge in the community saying, hey, this is what we want. Do you care if we put this together? And my response is 100% go for it. 100% I'll pay for it. But, because it's something like that, I love to support people hanging out together. And especially because, the people that are hanging out together, truly enjoy being around each other. Everyone's very positive. So if that's what people want, go for it. But one thing I wanted to be very clear with the people that brought that up was that I don't want people to think I'm going to be in there playing. And because I'm not, I may pop in, but it's just not a game that I'm interested in. But at the same time, I'm not going to stop other people from playing it. And generally, it's not something I'm going to promote a ton. It's almost like the way I talk to the people that wanted to start. I said, you know what it's like? It's going to be like if you ever go to In-N-Out. If you don't know what In-N-Out is, it's a burger chain, more so really only on the West Coast in the United States. But they have a menu, so you walk in, you see the menu. But then there's a hidden menu, right? So you can go in and order a burger animal style. But nowhere on the menu does it say animal style or protein style. And I kind of presented it to him that way. It said, go for it, let's do it, I'll pay for it. But it's not something I want to actively promote. It's almost like on the hidden menu so people in the community know about it. So that's something that I thought was kind of cool that came from the community. Other big thing this week that was going on, and it happened this past weekend, was PAX West. And internally gauging my desire to go to it, it was a lot different than the past. And probably a lot of that is because now at home I have 2 kids instead of 1. And you just don't want to, I don't really want to leave home. I'm pretty much a homebody, but I don't like leaving the state. I don't like traveling unless it's a really, really, really good reason, especially now. Where before, say last year, 2 years ago, I think I went to PAX West last year, maybe 2 years ago. But I was really got excited for those events. And now I really have zero desire to go. Asterisk. With the asterisk being the sole reason I would ever go to a PAX now was for actually 2 reasons. Number one would be to see my friends that I create content with, that I'm friends with on the internet. That's the number one driving factor. It has to work out logistically, but are my friends going to be there? Because that's one of the main draws. Because if you've been to one PAX, I don't want to say you've been to them all, but it's a really, really crammed situation, which there's nothing wrong with that. You can manage your day. You get to see some games early and things of that nature. But that's one. The second desire to ever go to a convention again would be to do something cool with the community, whether to plan a dinner or something like that where everyone could kind of hang out for the night. That's something I'm really interested in. And the third reason that I would ever consider going to another big convention like that, and this isn't not meant to sound like aggrandized, it's just honest. Like, I would have to be paid to go, right? So someone wants me to do a job, whether it's commentating or, representing a brand or whatever. It would just have to work out where, like, if I'm going to fly across country, spend time away from my family, it's got to be worth it. And those are the things that those are the only things in that order, with, I'd say, friends / actually the way I wrote it down is that friends / community is the number one thing, and then being paid is the second. That's what would have to happen. And I really had zero FOMO this weekend. I saw on Twitter, people were tweeting stuff about PAX West. I'm like, oh, that's cool. The only thing that you miss out on is you'd love to grab a dinner with your friends. That's the only thing that you miss out on, at least that I felt I missed out on. And I didn't really feel like I missed out, but I would have liked to have done this past weekend. Another thing that happened this week is my YouTube schedule got blown on Dark Souls 2. So what I mean by that is currently we have 2 series running on YouTube. We have The Trouble in Tarkov, which I'm going to talk about that next, and Dark Souls 2, which is the ported VODs from Twitch. So meaning every live show for about an hour and a half or so, I'll play Dark Souls 2. We'll make a lot of progression in the game. I will then highlight those videos or chop up those videos into roughly 30-minute episodes and export them to YouTube. So there's a lot of confusion on that on my end. If I don't clip the show right away, meaning typically what I do, the best way to do it is when I end the show, I immediately shut everything down, and then I'll go right into the back end of Twitch, and I will cut out the segments. I'll cut out the live Tarkov segment, export that, and then I'll cut out the individual Dark Souls segments. So I'll do 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, or however it breaks down. And if you hear me say /marker in chat, that's a way in the back end where it marks an indicator so it can be easily highlighted on the back end. So anyways, the best way to do it, you stop the show, you chop it up, you title all the episodes, and you export it to YouTube. Really easy. If you don't do that right after, which I didn't do on one of the days, things get really jumbled. The numbers get out of order, and it becomes a logistical difficulty, and scheduling it gets tough, especially if you miss an episode. Well, I thought I was on task and it didn't work out, so I got a tweet on Saturday morning, which I'm extremely appreciative of. It says, hey, Dan, you published 2 episodes this morning, which was only supposed to be 1, and you skipped an entire segment of the game. So immediately, like, that's one of those moments when I talked in the earlier show about having like your heart squeezed. That was like it wasn't like a full hand squeeze. It was like half a heart squeeze. And so I'm like, okay, great. So I had to spend probably 40 to 45 minutes cleaning that up. So I took the 2 episodes down, re-uploaded the other episodes, and got everything back on track. But it really taught me the importance of just adding a little bit more discipline after going live, after show. And if you have a great show, at least if I have a great show, at the end of it, like, I'm a little gassed, that's good, meaning that, you know, you're putting on a show, and when you hit the off button on the stream, like, you take a second to catch a breather. If you have put on a good show, for me, all the good shows I've had at the end, I feel like almost like I ran, not a marathon, but ran a couple miles. Like, you get hyped up and then you need to decompress. I just know I need to add just a little bit higher level of discipline at the end of it, where it's like, okay, show's done, but you're not done yet. Clip it up, get it up, and then schedule it out. And then you avoid that feeling of panic. And then not only that, but it's like dominoes that fall, right? So not only do you have that like heart squeeze feeling, but also the order of the videos are messed up. And more importantly, people that expect a video at 11 a.m. now have this hodgepodge. It's like, hey, I've been watching, I'm not equating my Dark Souls series to Game of Thrones, but it's like, all right, I just watched Game of Thrones episode 1, season 1, and I'm ready for HBO to drop the next one, and they drop episode 4, and you're like, well, what happened to episodes 2 and 3, right? It just doesn't make sense. That's how I view it. So that's why I feel like that internal squeeze on that. So that's what happened. And then other thing, and I think this will be a reoccurring theme until we figure it out, and I don't know, how or when it's going to be figured out, but YouTube has just been such a difficult beast for me lately. I'm fully committed through the month of September to have a Tarkov video hit every single morning that's edited. I've hired an editor to do that. I'm just not really happy with the performance of the videos. So it tells me 2 things. And I need to put the caveat, I'm extremely happy with the product, right? So I'm very happy with the videos we're putting out. I think there's some of the best Tarkov stuff I've done. And I think Zane, the editor, is doing a phenomenal job. But for all the effort and time and money going into that series, it's like, okay, it's really on par with the Dark Souls 2 series. So like I said, I need to have some patience. I'm going to ride it out for 30 days and reevaluate then. And regardless of what happens, though, is I do want to keep Zane on, whether we're doing Tarkov or something else. But I'm going to give it 30 days, show some patience, and then reevaluate. Because right now I looked at the views, and I'm like, I'm really, for all these things going into it, I'm not happy with it. So typically what I would do is I would start up a different series or reduce Tarkov to Monday, Wednesday, Friday on YouTube, and have Tuesday, Thursday be something else. Because bottom line, you always hear, this will be a reoccurring theme of what you hear me talk about, because this is how I approach it. This is an experiment, right? So I don't know what's going to work. If I knew it was going to work, I'd be doing it. I continue to have to test things and do more of what works and less of what doesn't work. And right now, Tarkov is not working. So one of the things I tried to do to change it up, I packaged it as a different series, right? So I titled it Trouble in Tarkov. So now it's not just a playthrough on Tarkov. It's a series called Trouble in Tarkov that's themed a little bit. So I think it'll be easier to refer to, maybe easy for people to remember. Which brings me to the other aspect of creating original YouTube content. I think part of the other thing that needs to be happening, or what I know needs to be happening, is, and this is just through, I listen to really one podcast on a regular basis or daily basis, and it's a guy called Gary Vee. And if you ever hear about some of the things I talk about, you see like, oh, I can see how that was derived from that. Gary Vee is this, it's either you really like him, you've never heard of him, or you don't like him at all. I guess that's pretty much anyone. But, it's just a matter of distribution, right? So, what I'm going to do with this, and I'll give you guys a check-in next week. So I have this the series I'm very proud of, right? It's not performing how I want to, but I'm going to work on the distribution. So now I'm going to put it on the Facebook page, see how it does there, and just continue to experiment with it. Because when it's all said and done, I'm going to have 30 plus episodes of a highly edited series that I'm going to be very proud of. So because I have that level of, and when I say proud, I'm not saying like beating my chest, like proud. I'm more like, hey, look, I feel like this is really good work. So I'm going to try and put it out there. So when it's all said and done, I'm going to have these episodes. So I'm going to continue to try to promote it in different ways, maybe outside of YouTube and in different venues to see, to generate some more interest in that. And kind of wrapping things up here before we get into the Q&A, another thing that I toyed with a little bit, and this is just my personal opinion, and this is, like I said, I feel like I'll preface this because it's no judgment against anyone else, and I don't even know that I don't even have those internal feelings when I see someone do it. But this past weekend, it was my birthday, and I had some time on my actual birthday where we had celebrated, things were chill, and I'm like, I could stream now, and I would like to stream now, but I didn't want to stream because it was my birthday, meaning that sometimes, and this is just my personal feeling, and I've got nothing against it, sometimes you'll go into a stream, even like people that you regularly watch, you'll be like, oh, hey, it's my birthday stream. And to me, I don't know why, but I just didn't want to do that. I didn't like the vibe that gives off, and I can't really, I don't know how to best explain it, but I almost feel like there's a level of expectation when you go as a viewer. When I go into one of those streams, it's like, I don't know. I just didn't want that for the people that are regulars, the community. I just didn't want people to go in and feel differently because it's my birthday. I'm not a huge birthday guy. Like once I felt like once you hit your mid-20s, you're like, all right, it's just another birthday. But I just didn't, that was the reason that prevented me from streaming. And I felt, and I don't regret that at all. I'm glad I didn't. And I guess what I could have done is just, not put that in the stream title. But at the same time, I feel like people have known, if you follow me on other social media, whether it's Instagram or Snapchat. Instagram is where I'll pull back the fourth wall a little bit more. So like you get to see like a little bit of my day-to-day personal life that's, I don't know, that you wouldn't necessarily care to hear about on the podcast or on the Twitch. So I don't know. So that was one of the things that I had some thoughts on, but I was glad I didn't do it. And this is no judgment on people that do. I just didn't want that vibe on the channel and on the Twitch show. I think people would have been excited to have a stream that wasn't planned, but it just didn't feel right. So I didn't do it. And I feel like when I'm in these situations, things that I've done where you just either go with your gut or don't go with your gut. When I don't go with my gut, that's when I'm like, oh, that didn't work out. And when I listen to my gut or my intuition, I'm like, yeah, that was the right move. And that's kind of how I feel about this one. So that being said, that was the week of documentation of thing that's going on. And in case you want to know, like super fourth curtain or third curtain or fourth wall, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you can kind of see it. But basically what I do on how I plan the show is I'll have an Evernote document. Evernote's a free, it's like an online notepad. And throughout the week, I'll just write down things that happen that were significant for something to talk about in terms of that, whether it's a challenge, something that went well. And by the end of the week, I'll just have a list of things that, that make sense to talk about in the show. So it's like, I've really been enjoying the show and creating it because it's not like I don't have to sit here. And although I'm recording this the day before, normally I'm a couple days out, ahead of time. I'm not like, oh, what am I going to talk about in the show today? Or, oh man, I feel pressure. I got to, come up with a good show. And I don't know if this is a good show or not, but I don't have to worry about what I'm talking about because I do a little work throughout the week to kind of build the show from there. But anyways, I do want to jump into the Q&A portion of the show. There were 3 questions these are other things that I highlight throughout the week. So we're going to jump into the first question, the Q&A portion of the show from Escape on YouTube. And this is a little bit different, but when someone puts themselves out there and they ask a question, even though it may not necessarily be related to what we're talking on the show, I feel compelled to answer it because that person put themselves out there. So anyways, and I don't want this to be like a general advice podcast or anything like that, but at the same time, if someone asks a question like this, I'm going to answer it. Anyways, Escape says, what advice would you give to a university grad struggling to get a job in their desired profession due to lack of practical experience? Most jobs need experience, but how do you get the experience if you don't need the job? And the reason I'm talking about this on the show is I feel like it's going to help Escape on YouTube, but also it's going to help anyone else that's probably in the same situation. The way I look at it is that if one person in the YouTube comments has this question, there's probably a minimum a handful of other people that have the same question that may not have asked or, got around to asking it. So basically, and this can apply for anything, but you have someone just graduate, they're struggling to get a job in their desired profession due to lack of practical experience. And really, it comes down to two things. One, what are you willing to do to get that job? And two, who do you know? So those two factors determine if you're going to get the job or not. So if you know someone in the area, easy, you're probably going to get the job. Number two, if how bad do you want it? So what I would do if I were you, I would literally go to the top 50 providers of job. Let's say you want to get a job in gaming, right? Let's say you live in California in say San Diego, and say in San Diego there's 30 game developers. I would go through, list all those 30 game development companies, or I would find 30 game development companies that you want to work for, and then I would go into LinkedIn and I would look for whoever's in charge of HR. I would look for anyone that works for the company. Then I would take that list. So this is company one. You say you have 10 people that work for the company. Then I would look for those 10 people on social media. I would follow them. I would reach out to them, and I wouldn't say, hey, can you hire me? I wouldn't say, hey, can I send you my resume? I would reach out to them and say, hey, can you tell me about your experience with this company and how you got that job? It's a very, very different approach than saying, hey, can you please hire me? Because number one, you do that for 30 companies times 10 employees roughly. That's a lot of people you're reaching out to. And two, you're giving people a chance to tell their story that you can learn from. Now, you're not doing this so you can weasel your way into the company, but maybe one of those people are going to say something that triggers something new. Be like, okay, well, this person, put together a slide share and sent it to everyone in HR, and that's how they got hired. I don't know. But basically, you got to do one of two things. You have to make a connection, or you have to be willing to work for a reduced amount or an intern situation. If you want it bad enough, those are the two ways to do it. So I hope that helps Escape. It's not easy advice. It's not fun advice. It's not fluffy advice. But I guarantee if you do those two things, one, you'll work for a reduced wage or free just to get your foot in the door, or reach out to all those people and make a connection. Maybe that connection allows you to get to that game company as an intern to work for free. You got to do it. Otherwise, you may be spinning your wheels for a long time and end up with a job you don't really want. Anyway, so to redial things back in, Stephen Williamson had a question on, this was from YouTube as well. All right, so Dan, I saw your comment on the last one. All of a sudden, your second one popped up on my notifications. I have a question for you. What is the origin of your silly humor, goofy banter, and pronunciation on the show? So basically, what you see on the show, or when I do things like mispronounce words, or just, do a goofy skit in the middle of a show, I don't know. It just comes from my head. Some of my close friends from back in the day in high school, that's the kind of stuff I would do around them. And I feel like I talked a little bit about this in the last episode. Just the more comfortable I am, the more you're going to see things like that. And I'm at the point where I'm 100% comfortable. I don't care, what I do anymore in terms of, what so-and-so are going to say. So because that's just how I am, so it's not like I don't try to artificially make things funny. I just do goofy stuff, and whatever sticks and whatever doesn't. And it just leads me to believe that the more real and authentic you are, the better things are. You can try and force, and this is, I guess, a pet peeve, and I'm not big on pet peeves, but one of the things that I just steer away from personally is that I don't like making emotes for my Twitch show that aren't organic, meaning that like, and this is no judgment. I'm just saying it's just not for me and not what I want to do. So you'll go into a channel and you'll see a channel with all these emotes and they're all staged, right? So they may be like someone, there's, like I said, nothing wrong with it. It's just not how I do it, where it's someone will be posing with like a PogChamp face or, whatever. And to me, the best emotes come from the community, right? So like we have a PogChamp-esque emote on the channel, but that came from Jay or Wolves at My Door. He sent it to me. He's like, hey, dude, use this in an emote. I'm like, that's pretty good. But if I were to try and like plan that, it wouldn't have worked. And so I always feel like the best stuff just happens and then people gravitate to it or capture it or they talk about it. And it's like, okay, well, that was funny. So that's what people like. So just continue to do that. And I feel like early on, I started just kind of getting more comfortable and getting a little bit more goofy, and it was fun and people liked it. So it was kind of like with my level of comfort being increased, people like that. So I just got more comfortable and the needle kept moving from there. So I hope that answered your question. I don't know where the origin is. The origin essentially is my head, and things work and things don't. And I just keep, doing more of what people like and experimenting and just trying to. I always talk about, you'll hear me, this is another reoccurring theme on the show, just always hear me talk about moving the needle, right? Just a half tick every time. Just make each show a little bit better, each YouTube episode a little bit better, make the community have a little bit more fun each time. And over years and years, you look back and you be like, wow, a lot of stuff happened. All right, and the last question came from Clowntastic on Twitter. Clowntastic said, I just finished listening to the second episode of the podcast on YouTube, and I just want to say really enjoying the content so far. Thank you. I appreciate that. I mainly watch your Team Unity PUBG videos, and it's interesting to hear a more down-to-earth Dan. So I don't know if you mean like I'm not down to earth when I'm doing those. Possible question for your next broadcast. Do you have any games that are something of a guilty pleasure or that you like to play in private and just enjoy without feeling the need to be a showman for an audience? So it's really a question that is easy to answer, but has really evolved and changed over time. So since I started making YouTube videos and streaming on Twitch, it changed video games forever for me, because anytime, and you'll hear other people say this, I'm sure, but any free time I have to play a game to relax, in the back of your head, at least, if you're, I don't want to say if you're driven, but I'm just very driven. In the back of my head, I'm like, I should be recording this, right? Because you don't want to burn any time. And so it's like almost every gaming experience now is like, if I'm not recording it, I don't want to say it's like a waste, because it's not, because I still get enjoyment out of it. It's just very few and far between. The things that come to mind would be, in the past year, the only games I've really played off camera for personal enjoyment has been NBA 2K, which eventually I played so much that I'm like, all right, I have to bring it to the channel. I played a little bit of Hearthstone and Magic the Gathering. Outside of that, I really don't game outside of Twitch or YouTube. And the reason being is that I spend a lot of time working on the channel and Twitch and YouTube. And so I can justify that internally. I 100% justify it internally for myself and for my family, saying, hey, look, I'm spending this time away from my family working on this because it's growing. It's growing into a small business. It's continuing to grow, and it's working. So I can justify doing that. So the free time that I do have, I spend with my family, and then once they go to sleep or whatever, then I'll work on the channel more. So it's very rare that I sit back and I will just play a video game that isn't recording. And some people say, well, Dan, does that take the enjoyment out of it playing a game? It doesn't. It's really just changes the type of enjoyment. So for example, do I think I would enjoy playing Tarkov as much as I do not on Twitch? I don't think so, because that's part of the fun for me comes from playing with the Twitch audience, right? Because it just becomes such a different experience. And I don't anticipate that changing much. And I just think it's almost like I talk about this once during a Twitch show. One of my favorite classes I've ever taken in my life. I was a junior in high school, and I took a film study class. I might have been a senior. I was a junior. And I took a film study class. And prior to that class, I just looked at movies as like surface level entertainment. After that class, I learned so much about like lighting and tropes and red herrings and trivia behind movies and the way shots are set up and symbolism that I never would have remotely ever figured out without that class. And I appreciated movies more as cinema on a different level than I had ever prior to that class. And I kind of feel about the same way about gaming, where it's like you take this class, a la you start creating content around video games, and it opens up a door where you can't shut that door, right? I can never go back to watching movies without looking for deeper meanings and things, or looking for little hints that the filmmaker's trying to lead you to that normally you wouldn't have caught. Same thing with gaming. It's like, now that I've opened this door, I can't close it and just not think about making the videos for a community or for an audience. So I hope that helps, Clowntastic. It's very rare that I do. And I think part of it too is just based on my schedule as well. It's like, if I, back in the day, I don't know, it's hard to pontificate. I don't really want to construct a life right now where I construct something in my head right now where I would be, not have a family and have more free time. I don't want to go down that road. So I'm just going to leave it at that. But I want to thank you guys, Escape, Steven Williamson, and Clowntastic. Thank you guys so much for asking questions. I appreciate that are thought-provoking, and I think bring some value to people at the back end of the show. Also, if you guys don't know, if you go to dangheesling.com/ask, if you want to leave a voicemail question there, I'm going to start bringing on some voicemail questions, and hopefully on the next episode we can answer a few of those. That being said, I'm going to wrap up this episode. I hope you guys got some entertainment, distraction, enjoyment out of this episode, whether you were listening to it on your morning jog or run or at the office or just shutting it down for the night. I appreciate you guys. Hope you guys are enjoying the show. I want to thank a special group of people, because I haven't really asked, but it means a lot. On iTunes, I think there's 37 reviews. Thank you guys. I read those. It's kind of like one way I gauge the show, because I haven't really asked people to do that, but not that I'm not going to in the future. I'm really glad that you guys did that. But it's one way that I kind of gauge the feedback of the show. I also look at the numbers. I'll probably talk about some podcast numbers in future episodes, just talking about how I kind of quantify how many people are listening to it and so on and so forth. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the show. I will see you guys next Monday, or talk to you guys next Monday, and thank you guys for dialing in. See you guys next week.